I found out my father died through a Facebook post. Yes, you heard that right. A distant cousin posted a black and white photo of him with a caption, "Rest easy, Uncle Mark." I stared at the screen in disbelief, refreshing the page over and over like maybe, somehow, the words would disappear. No call. No text. Not even a forwarded obituary. I called my mom immediately. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. She answered, calm as ever, like nothing had happened. "Jessica," she said, "I didn't want to upset you while you were with Danny. You've always been emotional." That's what she said. Emotional. Not grieving, not his daughter, not a human being with a heart. Just emotional. Meanwhile, my brother Tyler had been with her at the hospital, had helped plan the funeral, had written the eulogy, and no one told me a damn thing. Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own family? Like your pain didn't matter? Like love had a favorite child, and you weren't it? If you've ever been the forgotten one, tell me in the comments, because I know I can't be alone in this. Growing up, I used to think we were a picture-perfect American family. You know the kind, backyard barbecues on Sundays, birthday banners made by hand, Polaroids stuffed into kitchen drawers. We lived in a blue house on Maplewood Lane, and my dad, Mark Miller, worked long hours at a small engine repair shop while Mom, Linda, stayed home with us. Tyler was the golden boy. He was 3 years older than me, captain of the baseball team, honor roll student, never grounded. And I loved him. I really did. I used to follow him around like a puppy, copying his drawings, begging to play catch, even though I always got hit in the face. Dad would laugh and scoop me up, call me Little Miss Tough Cookie, and promise I'd get better if I kept trying. Those were the good years. I remember once, when I was 7, I made a Father's Day card with glitter and macaroni glued in the shape of a wrench, because Dad fixed things. He kept it on his toolbox at work for years. Said no gift ever beat it. Mom was different. She smiled when guests were over, played the role of doting mother. But even then, I noticed little things. Tyler got new bikes, I got hand-me-downs. He got 2 scoops of ice cream, I got 1. When I mentioned it, she'd say, "Jessica, stop comparing. He's older. You'll understand when you're a mother." And I believed her. I thought maybe that's how families worked. That love could be equal, even when attention wasn't. But still, there were moments. Christmas mornings where Tyler's gifts towered over mine. School plays where she showed up late for my scene, but never missed a second of his games. At the time, I didn't think it was favoritism. I thought I just needed to try harder. I worked twice as hard for half the praise, and I clung to every scrap of validation like it was a lifeline. A good job from Mom could carry me for weeks. And when it didn't come, I told myself, next time. Just be better next time. Looking back, I wasn't a daughter. I was a shadow, orbiting a sun that never once looked down at me. The signs were always there, but like most daughters clinging to hope, I ignored them. The first real crack appeared after I got pregnant with Danny. I was 28, single, and terrified. His father, a man I thought I'd spend forever with, ghosted me the moment I told him. I was humiliated, broken, and scared beyond words. When I told Mom, her face didn't even flinch. She just sipped her tea and said, "Well, I hope you're ready to grow up now." No hug, no excitement, just judgment. Tyler, on the other hand, had just proposed to Amanda, his college sweetheart. When they announced their pregnancy a month later, Mom threw them a massive baby shower. Catered. Balloons. Matching onesies. She posted about it nonstop on Facebook. So proud of my growing family. When I had Danny, she sent me a card. It wasn't signed. I brushed it off. I was used to being the underdog by then. I told myself maybe she was busy or overwhelmed. Maybe being a single mom embarrassed her and she didn't know how to handle it. But then came the birthdays. Danny's first birthday was just me, him, and a cupcake. No call. No visit. Yet a week later, she posted photos from Chase's birthday, Tyler's son. Full setup, Spider-Man bouncy castle, 3-layer cake, matching family t-shirts. I showed the post to my dad. He looked sad, like he wanted to say something but didn't. Your mom, she has a way she sees things, he mumbled, then turned back to his garden. That was Dad. Quiet. Soft-spoken. Loyal to a fault. Even when it hurt. The final straw before everything shattered came during Thanksgiving 2 years ago. I'd made all the arrangements. Cooked, decorated. Even bought a folding table to make room for everyone. I sent out invites weeks in advance. Mom confirmed, said they'd be there. Danny sat by the window for hours waiting for Grandma. She never came. At 6 p.m., I got a text. Sorry, sweetie. Tyler invited us over last minute. We didn't want to hurt his feelings. Hope you understand. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Not even a phone call. Not even a lie that made sense. That night, I sat across from Danny at our tiny kitchen table, the candles flickering over plates no one touched. He looked up and asked, Did Grandma forget where we live? I smiled through tears and said, No, baby. She just had somewhere else to be. That's when the bitterness started growing. Not just at her but at myself. For excusing it. For thinking love needed to be earned. For teaching my son that being second was okay. But the real betrayal, the one that cracked everything wide open, was still to come. And when it did, it wouldn't just break me. It would expose a truth I had spent my whole life avoiding. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the call, not from Mom, not from Tyler, but from Uncle Ron, Dad's younger brother. He sounded shaken, almost like he had been crying. Jess, your dad passed this morning. Heart attack. At home. I stood frozen in the middle of the grocery store aisle, holding a carton of eggs. For a moment, everything around me blurred, like the shelves, the people, even the air stopped moving. I felt like I'd been dropped through the floor. Dad. My quiet, steady, soft-hearted dad. Gone. Without a goodbye. Without a chance to tell him thank you, or I love you, or I'm sorry for all the silences I let stretch too long. I dropped everything in my cart and rushed out, barely remembering how I drove home. Danny was at school, and the silence in the house felt like it had its own heartbeat. I kept telling myself there had to be a mistake. I hadn't even known he was sick. I called Mom's phone. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. Then I tried Tyler. Voicemail. An hour later, a photo popped up on Facebook. A black and white photo of Dad, surrounded by flowers, with a caption from Tyler. Rest easy, Dad. We love you always. Wait, flowers? The funeral already happened. My fingers trembled as I scrolled the comments. There were photos. From that morning. All of them together, Mom in black, Tyler with Amanda and the boys, cousins, even our childhood neighbors. Everyone. Except me. And Danny. I hadn't even known he was gone, and now I was looking at photos of a funeral I wasn't even invited to. I called Uncle Ron again, sobbing. They didn't tell me. I cried. They never called. I didn't even get to say goodbye. He went quiet for a second, then muttered. Jess. I thought you knew. I asked Linda, and she said you wanted to mourn in private. Private? I hadn't even been told my father had died. What kind of lie was that? I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and cracked, much like something inside me did at that exact moment. This wasn't just neglect. This was erasure. They had erased me from his death. Like I didn't matter. Like I never mattered. 3 days later, I drove to my parents' house. The same house I'd grown up in. Mom opened the door and looked at me like I was a stranger. Not grieving. Not apologetic. Just annoyed. Jessica, you should have called. We've had a rough week. I couldn't believe it. I stormed past her into the living room. There were sympathy cards on the table, floral arrangements wilting slightly in vases. I turned to her. Why didn't you tell me? You're always so emotional, Jessica. You overreact. I didn't want a scene. He was my father, and Tyler was his caretaker. He was with us every day. You've always been distant. My throat clenched. Distant? Or pushed out? I turned to the bookshelf, hoping to find something, anything of him. And that's when I noticed the photos. Family photos on the wall. All of them had been changed. Old pictures with Dad, Mom, and Tyler's family. I wasn't in a single one anymore. Even the old family photo from my 12th birthday, The one where I was front and center with my braces and crooked bangs had been replaced with a cropped version. I was gone. Erased. I walked back to my car numb, not crying anymore. Just hollow. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel and whispered out loud, "What did I ever do so wrong to be forgotten like this?" And then something snapped. Not in a way that made me fall apart, but in a way that made me stand up. I may have lost my father, but I wasn't going to lose myself too. Not like this. Not quietly. Not erased. It took me 3 days to build up the courage. 3 days of pacing my hallway. Of staring at old voicemail messages from Dad, listening to his voice over and over just to remind myself that someone once had truly loved me. Then I drove to Tyler's house. It was just outside San Diego, a gated community where all the homes looked like magazine covers. Perfect lawns. Perfect porches. Perfect lies. Amanda opened the door. She looked surprised, almost guilty. "Jessica, what a surprise." I didn't bother with small talk. I walked straight past her into their living room, where Tyler was watching the game with a beer in hand. He didn't even stand up. "Didn't expect to see you," he muttered. "That much is clear," I snapped. "You buried Dad without telling me. Without telling Danny." He scoffed. "We didn't bury him, Jess. It was a memorial. He wanted something small." "Small?" I shot back. "It was big enough for you, Amanda, and half the neighborhood." He put down his beer slowly. "Look, Mom didn't think you'd want to be involved. You've always been the one who pulled away." I pulled something from my bag, an old photo of me and Dad fishing at Lake Arrowhead. He was laughing, holding up a tiny fish I'd caught. We were both soaked and muddy and radiant. "He loved me," I said quietly. "No matter what Mom told herself. No matter how much she tried to rewrite history. He loved me. And you had no right to take away my goodbye." Tyler looked away. It wasn't personal. It was cruel. I walked to their fireplace mantel and looked at all the framed photos, holidays, beach days, birthdays. Not one photo of me. Not one of Danny. I turned back around. "You don't get to rewrite this family without me in it. You don't get to erase the fact that I exist, that I have a son who adored his grandpa, who cried himself to sleep asking why he wasn't invited to say goodbye." And then I did the one thing I hadn't done in years. I took off the necklace I always wore, a silver chain Dad gave me on my 18th birthday, and placed it on the table. I don't need to prove I belonged. I know I did. And if you can't handle that truth, that's on you. With that, I turned and walked out. The air outside felt different. Cooler. Cleaner. Like I had finally stepped out of someone else's version of me and returned to the girl Dad had once called his tough cookie. After that confrontation, everything went quiet. No calls. No texts. Not even a cold message from Mom pretending to smooth things over. I had become a ghost to them. Not because I was wrong, but because I had finally told the truth. And in this family, truth was the one thing that got you exiled. At first, I waited. I kept my phone charged, notifications on high. But days passed and nothing came. Even Uncle Ron went silent, probably pressured, or maybe just too exhausted to get involved. People always say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood clots around secrets no one wants to admit. Danny asked me that night, "Mom, why didn't Grandpa want us there?" My chest tightened. I knelt down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Grandpa did want us there, baby. He just didn't get the chance to say so." He nodded slowly. He didn't need all the adult details, he just needed to feel included. And that was something I'd never withhold from him. Ever. But when I scrolled through social media a few days later, I realized how deep the betrayal went. Tyler had posted another tribute to Dad, this time a video montage. Old family clips. Birthdays. Fishing trips. Graduations. And in every one, either I wasn't there or my parts were edited out. It hit me like a wave. They were rewriting our family history in real time, curating a version where I didn't exist. And suddenly, everything from childhood began to make sense. The way Mom used to say I was too sensitive. The way she laughed when I cried at my 16th birthday party because she gave Tyler a car and me a journal. The way Tyler always had an extra seat at the table, and I was always told to make room. Even the family dog preferred him. But now I saw it clearly. It wasn't about preference. It was programming. I had been told I was less so many times I began to believe it. And now they were trying to delete me entirely. But pain has a strange power. It strips everything down to the bone, what you need, what you don't. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their invitations. I needed truth. And even if I was the only one carrying it, even if it meant walking through grief alone, I would not pretend I wasn't my father's daughter. He was gone. But I remembered the way he held my hand at the hospital when I had my appendix out. The way he stayed up all night when I failed my first college exam. The way he hugged Danny like he was made of glass and gold. That was real. And they couldn't delete that, not from my heart. Healing didn't come in a dramatic moment. There was no movie scene, no swelling music, no dramatic reunion. It started with small things. Little acts of reclaiming myself. Like finally hanging photos of Dad and Danny in our hallway. Not the approved versions, not the edited ones. Just ours. The blurry ones. The crooked ones. The ones where we were laughing too hard to pose. I started therapy again, something I hadn't done since college. And in one of my early sessions, my therapist, Elena, asked me a question I'd never thought to answer. If you could stop proving your worth, who would you be? That question unraveled something in me. Because for so long, my entire identity had been tied to surviving the family hierarchy. Trying to earn a place in a house where the staircase always led up to Tyler's room. Never mine. So I stopped trying. I leaned into community instead. I joined a local grief support group, full of people who had lost someone and been sidelined in the process. A woman who wasn't allowed to speak at her husband's funeral. A man whose siblings sold their childhood home without telling him. We cried. We laughed. We shared soup recipes. It was the most honest table I'd ever sat at. Danny, too, began to heal. He started writing letters to Grandpa. Sometimes just drawings of spaceships and baseball games. Sometimes full of questions like, "What's heaven like? Do you still have coffee?" I got him a special notebook for those letters. We called it the Sky Journal. It became our ritual, Sunday mornings, pancakes, and Sky Journal time. I also reconnected with my cousin Rachel. She had always been the black sheep on Mom's side, the one they whispered about for not getting married. Turns out, she had been exiled in her own way too. Now she comes over every Friday for movie night. Danny calls her Auntie Ray, and she calls us her real family. Slowly, a new version of home began to form, one built not on bloodlines, but on choice, on truth, on presence. And one morning, as I watched Danny chase the dog around the backyard, I realized something. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Fully. Honestly. Even joyfully. And I think Dad would have been proud of that. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever been the one left out of the group text, the photo album, the final goodbye, I see you. You are not invisible. You are not unlovable. And your truth matters, even if no one else is ready to hear it. Families can break us, but they can also teach us the kind of love we deserve, the kind that doesn't need proof or permission. Sometimes, healing begins the moment you stop chasing a seat at the wrong table. So, if this story touched something in you, I invite you to share your own in the comments. Let's build a community where no one has to grieve alone. And if you're still holding back tears, know this. You're allowed to rewrite the ending. You're allowed to choose peace. And you're allowed to begin again. Comment your story. Like if this made you feel seen. Subscribe for more truths that deserve to be told.